When Avatar: The Way of Water first released back in December 2022, it wasn't just another blockbuster. It was James Cameron returning to Pandora 13 years after the original changed cinema forever. The sequel carried the weight of expectation, the kind only Cameron could summon, and it delivered one of the most visually ambitious films ever made. Avatar Theory here, hope you're doing well and having a fantastic day. And fast forward to 2025 and we find ourselves on the doorsteps of the third film, Avatar: Fire and Ash. To bridge that gap, Cameron and 20th Century Studios re-released The Way of Water in theaters, and I was able to watch that re-release in 4DX. Now initially when Avatar: The Way of Water released in 2022, I was able to watch it in 4DX as well, so it wasn't my first time experiencing this movie this way, but it's certainly one of the more interesting ways if you've not yet seen a movie in 4DX. Now what was interesting about this re-release of Avatar: The Way of Water, right before the movie starts, there's a message from James Cameron himself, approximately 1 minute long, and that video message itself is in 3D, where he just talks about Avatar: The Way of Water, stating that this is the intended way to see the movie, and to say a thank you to the audience attending this re-release. There will be a special clip from Avatar: Fire and Ash at the end of the movie, which I will talk about in a moment. Now as for 4DX, from the moment the film begins, you immediately realize that, well, this is not a standard cinema screening or experience. The seats rumble gently as the forest awakens, the subtle puffs of air simulate the feeling of rushing through Pandora's jungle. But it's when the Banshees take flight in the opening act that 4DX fully reveals itself, especially during date night as Jake and Neytiri soar over the floating mountains. The motion seats tilt and dive with the rhythm of the flights. It's honestly exhilarating, and of course in 4DX water, unsurprisingly, plays a major role. Every time a character dives beneath the ocean surface, a cool mist sprays lightly over the audience. During large ocean battles, sprays intensify and the seats buck to mimic crashing waves. This pairing of water effects with Cameron's underwater cinematography makes you feel like you've been pulled under alongside the Sullys. Then there are the environmental touches. Arrows whizzing past your ear are accompanied by sharp bursts of air from the back of your seat, and explosions rattle the chairs with heavy vibrations. Even moments like walking through rain are recreated with fine mists falling from above. The balance between subtlety and spectacle is impressive. When the story slows down, the effects almost fade into the background, letting you focus on the character. But when the action erupts, 4DX turns into pure kinetic energy. The biggest surprise of watching The Way of Water again, especially in this format, is just how much more I felt immersed even though I've watched this movie several times. The ocean sequences in particular feel reborn, and I don't know if they changed any of the 3D on this movie, but it just felt that much better than what I remembered. Maybe they upgraded some systems in my cinema, I'm not entirely sure, but this was by far one of the best 3D experiences I've ever had, despite the seats moving like a roller coaster at times. If you've seen Avatar: The Way of Water before on TV and never experienced it in cinema, I encourage you to watch the re-release and experience it, well, as Cameron states, the way it's intended, because watching it on such a big screen and in 3D makes you more aware of Cameron's meticulous world building. The clothing of the Metkayina, the ritual tattoos, everything, every little detail stands out that much more. Even the soundscape, enhanced by rumbling seats of course, highlights subtle touches like the deep resonance of Tulkun calls, which vibrates through the chair in a way stereo speakers at home simply can't replicate. Now to touch on the 4DX again, if there is one thing that it does the best, it's action. The train raid sequence early on in the film is perfectly demonstrated. As the train derails, the seats lurch violently, the floor rattles, and bursts of air simulate gunfire and shrapnel flying past your head. Well, not the actual floor, but in 4DX there is this platform which you put your feet on, which is kind of like a separate floor, so that kind of rattles as well alongside the seat and makes you feel like you're not just watching the sequence, you're essentially inside it, being tossed around with every explosion. Rewatching The Way of Water 3 years later in the cinema, knowing that Fire and Ash is around the corner corner feels like it just adds more emotional weight to it. I mean, in 2022, much of the conversation centered around the film's visuals, runtime, and Cameron's gamble on underwater performance capture. Now, with Fire and Ash set to release in December, the story feels like a crucial bridge. The Sully family dynamic, for instance, carry a sharper edge. Metkayina's role as the eldest son resonates differently when you know his fate. Luwak's rebellious streak feels like a setup for his expanded arc moving forward, and Kiri's mystical connection to Eywa takes on new importance as her role deepens in the saga. Watching again in 2025, you see The Way of Water less as a self-contained sequel and more as a foundation for Cameron's grand multi-film arc. If you've not seen Avatar: The Way of Water in cinemas at all, I would highly recommend you do it in IMAX 3D, because even though 4DX is great, it isn't without drawbacks. At its best, it's pure magic, a flight across Pandora's reef that makes you forget you're in the theater, but it isn't always perfect. During quieter, dialogue-heavy scenes, the constant low-level seat vibrations can occasionally feel unnecessary, even distracting. At times, I found myself wishing the system trusted silence and stillness as much as it trusted spectacle. Another drawback is fatigue. The Way of Water runs over 3 hours long, so keep that in mind. And while the 4DX seats are surprisingly comfortable, constant motion does wear you down. By the final arc, I felt more physically drained than I normally would after a long film. For some, this immersive ride might cross into sensory overload. Keep in mind that at the moment I do have a little bit of a back injury, which I didn't have back then, so that might add to it. And I mean, they do say that if you have intense pain or are pregnant or feel sick or anything like that, then you should not watch 4DX. So that was kind of my own fault, but do keep that in mind if you are planning to watch 4DX. So is it worth watching Avatar: The Way of Water again in the cinema? Absolutely. 4DX aside, the re-release of Avatar: The Way of Water isn't just another chance to see a great film. It's an entirely new way to inhabit Pandora. More importantly, this re-release reminds us why returning to theaters matters. In a world of streaming where many films arrive on digital within weeks, The Way of Water proves that some stories demand to be experienced communally and on a massive screen, and also in 3D. It primes us for Fire and Ash, reconnects us with the Sully family, their triumphs, their losses, and their bond with Pandora itself. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, with Cameron's message, he does say that there is an exclusive clip for Avatar: Fire and Ash at the end of The Way of Water, and it is kind of a rotation, so there's a 1 in 3 chance of you seeing 3 different clips. The one I got to see was the one of Jake and Neytiri meeting Pelak of the Wind Traders, the same clip that was shown on the Meta Quest, and I know the other 2 clips are of the Mangkwang clan attacking the Wind Traders, whereas the 3rd clip is of Quaritch meeting Varang. Now, I am planning to see The Way of Water at least one more time, but this time in IMAX 3D, so I do hope I get to see one of those 2 clips at the end, because it would be a real shame if I saw the same clip again. But regardless, seeing this clip in 3D was absolutely amazing and makes me that much more excited for Avatar: Fire and Ash. But that was essentially my ramble on the re-release of Avatar: The Way of Water. Not much of an in-depth review of the movie itself, because I feel that most of you already know the beats of the movie, and I'm planning a deep dive into both Avatar movies before the release of Fire and Ash, so keep an eye out for that. And if you have seen Avatar: The Way of Water in IMAX 3D before and would like to try it out in 4DX, I would say go for it. If you've never seen a 4DX movie, it would be a great first time experience. The only thing is, I would not do 4DX as my first time experience for a movie, because even though it is quite incredible in itself, it can be immersion breaking, it can distract you from the movie, and personally, I like to have that quiet experience when watching a movie. But let me know in the comments below if you're planning to see Avatar: The Way of Water, the re-release, and if you have, let me know which clip you got at the end. But for more Avatar content, have a look at the rest of my channel, and until next time, have a fantastic day and stay safe.